is that happiness is based off of our own perceptions about events.
If something bad happens, they kind of let that sit and they just say, that's a part of me now. That's my identity. That's who I am. When in reality, we have the choice to kind of say no. We've had so much comfortability that we've actually had the time to now decide, do we want to take our own lives? When literally the whole point was to try and stay alive.
Remove the judgment and you remove the thought. I am hurt. Remove the thought, I am hurt, and the hurt itself is removed. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, Book 4, Verse 7. Welcome back to the Deeply Podcast. In this podcast, we aim to have all sorts of deep conversations about different topics to learn more from the world around us. My name is Karthik. The guy on the other side of the mic is Sven.
Hello, hello.
And in today's episode, we are talking about happiness.
Yeah.
So, let's start with Marcus's idea here. Uh, for those of you who don't know Marcus, Marcus Aurelius is a Stoic philosopher and also Roman emperor. From He ruled from 161 to 180 A.D. and he wrote a series of meditations called Meditations, basically a collection of personal thoughts. So, in this thought, I think what Marx is getting at is that happiness is based off of our own perceptions about events,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he
Yeah.
says, remove the thought that you have been hurt. And if you remove that thought, then the hurt itself is removed. I want you to think about in your life, viewer that is watching, some event that brought you misery, perhaps. Did the actual event bring you misery, or was it your thought about the event? Was it your reaction to the event? Was it, um, maybe you have this belief that this event uh, is supposed to mean something negative, therefore I should be negative about it. Sven, what do you think about
Yeah.
today's quote?
Right. So it also kind of goes off another Stoic quote of like, we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality. And I think it kind of is kind of going into the crust of the idea that the brain is going to tell you things, but you kind of are the one that's able to take in that information and then choose and decide what to do with it. Because the brain isn't meant for you to be happy. The brain wasn't designed for happiness. The brain was designed to survive. So the brain is always picking up patterns. And when something bad happens, the brain is going to be like panic, 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 or like don't do this thing ever again, blah, 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 because it's trying to help you survive. It's not a bad thing that it's doing. You kind of just have to be, as an observer, kind of being like, okay, my brain is telling me this, but I have the choice to now say, okay, well, X, Y, and Z. Whereas a lot of people, they may say, I feel hurt. And like the quote says, I feel hurt on repeat. And they kind of just run with it. If something bad happens, they kind of let that sit and they just say, that's a part of me now. That's my identity. That's who I am. When in reality, we have the choice to kind of say no. And a lot of people, I think, and a lot of times in spirituality, people get kind of invited into this idea that you are not your thoughts. You are just kind of the observer, which I just mentioned. And I think that's kind of what the quote's referring to, right?
Mm, yeah, I think there's two different sort of stages to your emotions. So the first is a sort of instinct, an instinctual reaction. But I think the second one is a understanding. So let's say someone trips us. We don't know if it's on accident or on purpose. Maybe our initial reaction is uh, like a series of, I don't know, anger and, oh, how could they do this to me? And, oh, life is treating me so badly. But then upon a second opinion or an opinion after the fact, you might realize, okay, hey, everyone's getting tripped. What's there to really be worried about? So
Right.
we're talking a lot about trying to avoid anger, but what
Yeah.
is trying to get happiness? Sven, do you want to start with this idea,
Yeah. So I
this
think
question?
we draw happiness. We can draw happiness from being happy. And if we want to reduce that down, we can simply, let's just say you're in public and you say a joke and then someone laughs, and then now that you've invited them to kind of be a part of this, they tell you a joke back and that's funny and you laugh too. You are kind of manifesting positivity by putting it out there first. If you're angry and upset and you say something mean to somebody, they might get angry and upset back, so you're manifesting that back. So it's kind of this idea that you kind of get, you what is it, you get what you give.
Ah,
And
yes.
it right. And I think it's really important that people, if they are unhappy, to not have that as like their baseline presentation. Like if they want to find happiness, because then if they're miserable, they'll just attract misery. Or people that are happy won't want to kind of like be in that headspace. They might get unattracted, like like the law of attraction. So I think it's important to always, some people say that when you smile, I'm sure this has been studied on, that simply smiling can make you happier.
Yeah, I
Something
believe
in the
so.
brain. And then also like power posing in the front of the mirror can like give you confidence, and like just these different things that you do like with a complete intention. And even if you think this is not going to help, apparently science has found that there is a change in, whatever it is, chemistry, whatever it is. And so you got to kind of put out that energy that you want back, and it's almost like karma. You do something bad can happen to you because you've deserved it, for example. I think it kind of goes the same way with happiness or joy or anger. It's kind of like you punch someone, they'll punch you back.
Mm. Yeah, I think what Sven is also speaking to is that we should make these little efforts to improve our level on the happiness scale because we only live today or in the present moment. So we have the
Yeah.
choice to be happy. I was listening to a podcast episode that Sven sent. We'll link it in the description below, and it was on Mo Godot was the guest speaker.
God, I,
I don't
God,
know.
I think, yeah,
Okay,
something like that.
and he said something along these lines. The majority of the positive emotions are in the present moment. Anxiety comes from the future, and regret comes from the past. So, when we think about the past or the future, what we're kind of implicitly stating is that the present is good enough for us to handle. So, he also used this in a fight or flight response, for example. Because if a lion is in front of you, well, then in the present moment, you have fear, and that is a real fear. But then, if we think about the future and we get anxious about it, or if we're, regretful about what we did or didn't do in the past, then that means we don't have something important enough to focus on in the present moment that is negatively impacting our present moment. So, by that conclusion, the present moment can be positive. You can have positive emotions in the present moment, so long as you are not being faced with an existential threat like to your survival.
Right.
Especially in the modern world where we don't have to run from many lions, at least in the United States.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so true. It's like me and my brother had said this years ago, but he was like, in the past, and people were surviving the forest. It's like you got a depressed person in the forest. No, they're busy doing stuff. They're trying to survive. They don't have time to be depressed. They don't have time. And I think in the modern world, the number one killer for men under 30 are themselves, right? Suicide. This is a very touchy subject, but it's true. And so we've gotten to the point of we've had so much comfortability that we've actually had the time to now decide, do we want to take our own lives, when literally the whole point was to try and stay alive.
Mm,
That's
yeah, I
how
see.
comfortable we've gotten. And we even like way back, the Buddha, they had this whole thing about like desiring not to desire. So it's like you can't kind of do that. Like they've had the time to think like, okay, I'll have food, I'll have water. Like you kind of have to have those things to survive. But like material objects, fame, fortune, whatever it is, if you desire those things, you then bring friction into the world. So instead of just having your basic needs and your needs met like from survival, now we've now kind of bring friction down to kind of want other things that weren't necessarily intended for our design. And so now then they started meditating, and now you have different forms of meditation. And a lot of people these days, I think they don't. When it comes to meditation, people think the idea is to like clear your mind. Like I think the whole kind of world of meditation has been a bit like skewed. Dr. K had said something that like you're not doing meditation wrong. You just don't have a good enough teacher.
Hmm.
I thought that was a pretty good quote. And he also had said something interesting about people that try to relax their minds when they meditate. He said that what you could try is actually doing the opposite. Put your brain in overload. Try and pick up every sound every second. Try and think of every thought and run your brain at super high pace. Eventually, you'll get super exhausted, and then you'll retract naturally without force.
Interesting.
Because Right, because when you try and think about getting rid of thoughts, you're just going to get combated with thoughts because you're bringing friction into the world. The same way that in life, when we desire something, we're bringing friction in because we're not having it, and then we get sad. And in that podcast that you mentioned with Mo Gaudat, he had said, like, when we were on the beach on the coast and we see the waves and they're crashing and the sound of the birds or the eagles or seagulls, some things are imperfect. We go out in nature and we see a tree that's crooked and there's ants and flies, and things are imperfect, but we expect them to be that way. We're not going out there and trying to fix the tree branch or fix the tree stump and straighten it up. In fact, if you tried that, you'd break it and you'd probably be more upset. So, we have a lot of expectations about things, but when things are the way they are and we accept them for what they are, we kind of just play into it, and we don't have that resistance, that friction. So I think that's a pretty interesting take on, like, the modern world. If you're trying to accept and adapt to certain situations, accept things for what they are, and don't have expectations, because expectations can give you friction and cause you to be upset.
Wonderfully said. Yeah, we expect a tree to be imperfect, but we expect ourselves to be perfect.
Right.
So, this constant battle of comparison that happens, whether it's on social media or just between people in friend groups, right? It is basically stating a situationship that says when something goes our way, maybe when we level up on whatever scale society deems as acceptable, then we should be happy. But when the opposite happens, we should be unhappy. But these societal scales, which have, or these societal scales have been proven to be debunked as sort of fake scales that don't lead to happiness. For example, money, getting nice cars, very
Hmm.
expensive cars, all these types of material things don't seem to be the right way to go. They've been debunked by many rich people who wanted to
Yeah.
strive for these things, and they got these things even, but it wasn't actually worth their time, right? Which is something that you can't get back. So now I
Yep. Yep.
want to kind of segue into, I think Sven, you touched on this briefly. So if we're trying to pursue happiness, you also talked about meditation. So
Hmm.
should we pursue happiness? Should we pursue maybe a calm state of mind through meditation in a stoic, contrary to what I've said, in a stoic uh, ideal, should we pursue virtue? That's what they aim for. Should we pursue pleasure or should we pursue something else? Basically, what I'm trying to say is happiness what we should be directly striving for? Sven, what do you think about this
Yeah.
question? Should we be
So
striving for happiness directly, or should we try to get it through doing something else, maybe living with a purpose or trying to be grateful? I'll let you expand.
yeah, yeah. So okay, so I think if you break it down, if you're striving for happiness or joy or these positive things, you can actually be doing something that's actually not beneficial and self-destructive, such as addictions or harmful acts that bring you happiness, for example. So I don't think that's the key, because if, let's just say, in extreme case, someone who I don't know, like a murderer or something, like, he enjoys doing it. He's happy doing it. We're not going to say, yeah, strive for happiness, keep doing what you love. What I think actually is the case is the virtues, doing things, good things, helping people. Because when people around you are happy, then you're happy. And it's more of a contentment, not this like sharp happiness, almost like a dopamine hit. It's more so this overall feeling. And a lot of people think happiness is like this constant state of intense smiling. When really it's like this contentment of being happy. Like, I can't use the definition in the thing, but it's like, did I mention the study earlier about the strangers on the train?
I don't. No, I don't think so.
Okay, so this is a good opportunity to bring up about the opportunity for happiness. So there was a study done, and this is actually about a lifelong study. There's a scientist who got reached out to then continue the study because the other scientist was getting too old and retiring. But they were following a lifetime of like a person's lifetime, like many people's lifetimes, and they did a study where they had a group of people go onto a train. One group of people were said, okay, you're going to go onto this train, you're going to listen to your favorite music. Okay, you can be on your phone. And another group of people were said, you have to go up to a stranger and you have to have a conversation with a stranger on this train. The people that listen to music and were on their phone, they kind of expected it. They said it was okay, it was fine, it was normal. And then the people that had the conversation with the strangers before, they said that they don't think they would like it, or that it might be, they're like anxious. But after, they actually realized that some of these people had a really increased peak in happiness. They're like, wow, that was a very profound conversation. I got so much out of it. I learned something new. So it's an opportunity for happiness. So this can kind of go to, like you said, like, should we search for happiness? Well, maybe try doing something that you otherwise wouldn't do, like going to a community event, going to, somewhere, like talking to people, doing different things that you haven't really done before to seek the opportunity out. Because if you do that, like the opposite of like kind of seeking an opportunity that you don't know about is like comparing opportunities. So like if you see someone who did X, Y, and Z, you might be like, oh my God, they did this. I'm jealous. Or they did this and they look so happy. I need to do this. And then now you've brought expectation into it. And so now you do that thing where now you've expected to be great. And now you're like, okay, yeah, that was great, but I thought much more. So you gained an expectation and then it killed you. So what you want to do is kind of find those opportunities in a sense of seeking happiness, where you can go to a place and maybe find happiness. It's not like you're going to be like, oh, I'm driven, I'm determined, because then you bring friction down into the world. So seeking it actually may make you a little bit, it may make the path rougher. I would say kind of go out and explore and accept things for what they are and don't expect, and maybe you'll get happiness in return.
I think something else that Mo Goddard said in the podcast episode was, if you love the world and you give to the world, then the world will unconditionally, I think it was about unconditional love. If you
Yeah.
unconditionally love the world will reciprocate that.
Hmm.
And what you said about trying to find or trying to look for new opportunities, I think uh, life can be a little bit more meaningful when you find a balance between structure, right? That's
Hmm.
which is very important in whatever reaching goals or going after whatever you want, but also spontaneity. So this kind of willingness to do new things, right? To try new things out, not be the same rigid person from
Yeah.
your structure, because too much structure makes for sort of a dull existence, right?
Hmm.
And maybe happiness is found in trying to, I don't know, I wouldn't say limit dull experiences, but I don't know, maybe search for new spicy experiences,
Yeah.
on the other side. Uh, yeah, you got anything else for
Yeah.
that
I
point?
mean, yeah, I guess the main takeaway I have is, if you search for an exciting experience and expect something, then my whole thing is that if you expect something, then you're
Ah,
going to be a
yes,
little bit
yes.
disappointed. But that's kind of
Yeah.
my big takeaway.
I think it goes back to expecting the perfection from a situation, right?
Right.
So,
Like if you
when something,
compliment someone, right? You may
mm,
expect a compliment, but some people compliment other people to get another one back. And
yeah,
a good practice that you can do is to genuinely find something that you find interesting or that you like and comment on it, and then just do it just for that, and then get the pleasure of knowing that maybe you spread a little bit of love or positivity and actually not expecting anything in return.
yeah, because I said before, when something goes our way, oftentimes we feel happy. When something doesn't go our way, then we feel unhappy. So let's say in this compliment example, if we give a compliment, that's all we can control, right? So we don't
Right.
control the response back. So we shouldn't be dependent on a response back to feel happy.
Hmm.
We should only, uh, or we should try and find happiness in the sense that we are able to control our uh, sort of notion for complimenting others, or
Yeah.
get out of our shell a little bit and talk to a new person, whether that be on the train, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of willingness to try new things, like you said, without expecting things in return. I think that's a big thing. Without expecting
Yeah.
something in return, especially from another person, I think we can expect things in return, like for our own self improvement, for example,
Hmm.
but maybe not from other people. I think that'd be a hard thing to kind of always try and look for in your life, is
Oh
a
yeah. I
return
mean,
from other people.
yeah. If you're looking for that, then you're not happy to begin with, because the moment you don't get it, you become unhappy. That means that your intention wasn't as a pure happiness as what you wanted it to be. Because what you're saying is, I will maintain happiness if this event happens. So you're not actually happy. You're giving yourself conditions. And when you give yourself a condition, and you give the world conditions, you're always going to be looking for the things that can make you unhappy.
Mm,
And I think this is a big thing that people who are trying to find happiness do. They always try and look for the things that's like, oh, I need this, I need that, and they got their eye on what's going to make them happy. Whereas if you actually do the opposite, you'll disappoint yourself less. And this kind of, I think that's kind of the overall kind of nutshell of what we're saying, right?
yeah, like in seeking something in return, you will get less
Right,
for yourself. You'll actually get less in return. So
right.
maybe let me reiterate that. In seeking something in return, you actually diminish your returns.
Yeah, and this also kind of goes on to another idea of like some people kind of find the idea of like death and dying, is to be sad, and they try and find a way to prolong their existence in a way by writing a book, writing a textbook, getting a statue, having a company. Like people try to make their mark as a cling. Not all people, but some. I'm just saying some people. Um, I was actually watching another podcast about happiness before this, and this guy was talking about it. Um, and so even some people are planning their happiness after death. Like so,
Mm,
it's like some people, go very far lengths to try and achieve what they would believe is to be happiness, or stuff like that.
yeah. So what's the message? Let's see. Try and find. Let's see. I don't know. I'm
I don't
trying to
even know if
think
it's
of a
about.
message.
I don't think it's actually even about
There's no
searching. I think
message.
the message is, it almost is about unconditional love, in the sense of unconditional. If you really want to, how do I put this? Like, find the beauty in things just for the sake of it, instead of trying to get something out of it. Like, for example, or like try to, I don't know. I guess it's hard to say because everyone kind of achieves happiness for different reasons. Um, like some people, like you said, there's rich people that, they're having a lot of money, but then they wrap their Porsche around, a pole, and because they aren't happy, and we think they are. So I guess the main takeaway, in my opinion, would be to not search for things to make you happy, because a lot of those things are not long lasting, and it kind of has to be a form of like contentment. And no matter what the outcome is about a situation, that you'll always have that baseline of like contentment. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I think it's different for everyone, and I don't know the answers to anything, but yeah.
What a great way to, yeah. Um, yeah, I think when you only have the present moment, as long as you can believe that, then your happiness can not be dependent on what you think about the past and what you think about the future, like what I said earlier. But that's obviously very hard to do in practice. So I don't know. Maybe there isn't a lesson. Just try and yeah, look for the good in people, look for the good in things,
Yeah,
and
be positive.
maybe you'll find some happiness along the way.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to this
Thank you. Thank
episode
you.
on happiness. I hope maybe it made you a little bit more enlightened, a little bit more happy, and made your day, week, or month just a little bit better.
Yeah. And if you have any, if you guys want to talk in the comments, feel free to comment.
Feel free. I'd love to hear and continue the
That'd be cool in the
conversation.
future. Yeah, have a little open discussion in the comment section. That'd be cool.
Take care, everyone.
All right. Bye
Bye.
bye.